everyone. I'm Melissa McAllister, and you're listening to the M.A.D.E Show. Now, for decades, I've dedicated myself to helping women break the cycle of dieting, navigate through all the fads, and change their lives through my nutrition coaching. Now, each week, I'm going to talk about everything from deep nutrition, mindset, self-care, the ideal workout routine, tips on how and why to implement intermittent fasting in your life, my favorite recipes that are not only crowd pleasers, but they're actually healthy for you, and so much more. Now, with small and consistent changes, you can defy aging while living a happier, healthier, and more heart-filled life. I'm so excited to show you it's possible with the right strategies that are so simple to adopt. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the M.A.D.E Show. So I have a guest today that I just told her she's my sister from another mister, because you guys know me. My brand centers around the word MADE for many different acronyms. And hers does as well. So her name is Tracy Pleschourt, beautiful last name. I wanted to make sure I said it right. And she definitely has the love of the word MADE as well. And we will probably talk about that a little bit, but let me give her a great little introduction. And then I just want to let you guys know that when in the podcast world, and I'm still new to this, but in the podcast world, we always send out just these one sheet, like bios information, and there's like topics and suggested questions and stuff like that, just to help the modifier or the moderator to, make it an interesting podcast and to make sure we kind of stay on topic. And hers, I told her, I said, wow, this could be a 5-hour interview, because the topics that she is going to discuss, and then also some great questions, just every single one of them, like, oh, I want to talk about that. Usually there's like 2 or 3. And I think to myself, we can elaborate on those 2 or 3, but this one, there's like a list. And so we might have to rapid fire a little bit, Tracy, because I'm just dying to hear, all of your takes on these things, and very excited to hear from you. But let me go ahead and just let you have a glimpse into her life and why she is where she is today. So Tracy Pleschourt, beautiful name, is founder of Self-Made University and the host of Secrets of the Self-Made podcast. Funny, right? She helps men and women create self-made wealth and wellness through life coaching. So Tracy has mastered and now teaches the critical skills necessary to manage your mind and overcome any obstacles, including overeating, overdrinking, time management, career, and relationship changes. How great is that? So just a few years ago, Tracy was a successful advertising executive. Stifled by the rigorous, time-consuming demands of the corporate world, she traded her 20 years of advertising to pursue her real passion, life and weight loss coaching. So it's so great to have you here. And Tracy, I would love to just start it off with, you talk about how you were in advertising and what made you get out of it. What was the, kind of the turning point that made you go, you know what, this was great for me for 20 years, but now, helping men and women in their life through life coaching with amazing overeating, which is huge, especially for me. The overdrinking, time management is a huge thing. And then as I would assume, not being literally married or overconsumed by your career, that you do let the things like overeating or, letting relationships, falter because you put so much time into a career that you may or may not love, but becomes such an important part. In fact, here I am just talking too much already in the beginning, but I saw a reel this morning, and it was a religious reel. And she was talking about how if you put so much thought into something else, like something else just completely consumes you, outside of God, was not that I'm getting religious on you guys, but that you almost idolize that thing and it becomes your everything, as opposed to her in the real meaning, her relationship with God. But it made me think, gosh, when you think about anything that is just consumes you, and it even could be a child, it could be a pet, it could be a career, it could be your gardening, whatever it is, but it becomes your everything. You tend to, take things that are really important in your life as well and not put so much emphasis on it, which could, hinder your health, and all of that stuff. So I'd be curious to hear, after that long-winded introduction, how did you go from taking this obviously very successful career and creating a new career, which is just as equally successful?
Yeah. Oh, well, let me start off by saying thank you for having me. I so appreciate the invitation. And I love bringing this information to people who may be feeling like their results or their experiences are completely out of their control and that circumstances are happening to them. And I want to teach them that circumstances can happen for you and that if you learn to think about it that way, you will drive completely different results in your life. And so just to go back a little bit into my days of corporate America, they were phenomenal. I absolutely loved it. I am kind of a goal setter. I am probably what some people would consider an overachiever. Like I always set that bar high so that I'm always, running after something. And although that served me for a really good chunk of my life, it did get to a point where I started to notice like this overwhelming sense of burnout, of exhaustion. And it was all because I didn't know it at the time. I know it now, but it's all because of where my focus was. So to your point, my focus was, I have to achieve fill in the blank, right? It was either a promotion, it was maybe an income level, maybe it was, winning a new account or attracting the next best talent, right? But I would have my eye so focused on the I have to achieve this that I became obsessed with it. And it would overwhelm me with an emotion. It would be that vibration that I would be then driven from. I would show up in such a way that felt very grippy, that felt very almost unattainable. Like, just think about in your mind what that feeling of unattainable is. Like, think about that. When you feel that way, how do you show up? Like, you probably get really short with the people around you. To your point, a lot of us will find ourselves standing in front of the pantry or in front of the open refrigerator door, right? Because that's not a good feeling. We want to push that feeling down. We want to numb that feeling. And we as human beings have learned that food and alcohol and shopping, those are the things that can minimize that feeling. It numbs it very effectively. And then we learn subconsciously that works, and we repeat, and then we do it again and again. And before we know it, we find ourselves 10, 20, 50 pounds overweight, or we find ourselves always reaching for the bottle of wine to numb or take the edge off. And we don't like the results that we've created for ourselves, but we have no awareness as to why that's even happening. And so Self-Made You is all about showing people why they're getting the results that they're getting currently. That's where we start. We don't start with, here's how you create, the unimaginable. It's not that at all. It's giving them a level of understanding of the reason why they're creating the current results that they're experiencing, so that they can understand it better. They can make sense of their mental, emotional, their physical, their metabolic well-being, and understand how they can now use what they've learned to then go on and create something new for themselves. So back in the day when I was in the advertising world, I absolutely loved it. I loved being surrounded by creative people. I loved the day in and day out work that I did to attract and retain a lot of the best talent in the industry. I learned a lot from that. I learned that I'm very inspired by creating cultures. I love to inspire other people. But I also learned that I had a certain capacity. I couldn't operate at this level of in overdrive, or this level of kind of almost fatigue any longer, that there was a capacity, like a cognitive capacity that I was hitting. And so I learned that too. And I learned that, when you have a sense of, almost completion, like that chapter of my life was complete. It was phenomenal, but it was complete. And it was time to move on to kind of that next objective. I willingly went, and I did it in really kind of a open sort of way of, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to learn here, but I'm just going to kind of follow my heart, my gut instinct. And I'm so glad I did. I retained a lot of those relationships. But I have gone on to create Self-Made You, where I can now teach the methodology behind overcoming the obstacles that many people have, overcoming the unwanted emotions like stress and overwhelm and fatigue and exhaustion and worry, and then creating what you once thought was impossible. That's what Self-Made You does. We do it with very simple to understand, easy to understand frameworks. I always joke with my clients that I have a little peanut brain, so I try to make learning easy, but learning is the key. Like our brain is not a vault, it's a processor. So it doesn't do me any good to just sit and tell people what I think they need to know. I want to show them how this applies to their life and show them how to practice this. That's what's going to take their level of understanding deeper. And so we created frameworks. And to your point, self, using the acronym of self, we don't actually use the acronym of MADE. I'll leave it to other phenomenal brands, but self is solving the mind math, eating foods that fuel you, learning to collect data to make your decisions from, and then fasting. We incorporate a level of fasting, intermittent fasting, into our 4 basics that we teach. So SELF are the 4 basics that we teach, and then there's little frameworks built within each of those pillars. And once you learn those and you practice those, it really does create a sense of control that a lot of people have never, ever felt in any circumstance of their life.
Yeah. So if you guys, most of you I know listen to the podcast, but if you were to be watching YouTube, you'd see me grinning from ear to ear as soon as she said intermittent fasting, because that's not, I also interviewed Dr. Lippman, and he's coming out this coming week, and he fascinates me. He, such a smart man. And I didn't know, because I'm not trying to, in my podcast, just bring on people that have the same beliefs as me. I'm not trying to do that. I would love, different views and to be challenged myself. And then he out of the blue mentions what a fan he is of intermittent fasting. And I about fell out of my chair. And then you just mentioned it. And I'm like, yay. I mean, I guess you just attract good people. Not that you're not a good person if you don't fast. That sounds terrible. But I love that you see the value in intermittent fasting, because I have been one for 25 years now. Yeah. But going to the point of, I love the acronym SELF very much. That is, I can understand why you use those 4 philosophies. And going into, and maybe some of them part of SELF is, but what are the 4 basics that you have for sustainable weight loss? What are the 4 basics that you help teach people to help obviously get to their goal and to be able to be sustainable and keep it that way?
Yeah. So it is always asking somebody, like, what is your current experience? Like, what's the circumstance that you're maybe challenged by? So let's just say it is somebody who is having a hard time losing weight. So let's just say their circumstance is 20 pounds overweight. They're going to have all sorts of thoughts around that. Like, your thoughts around maybe being 20 pounds or at a certain weight is going to be much different than my thoughts about being 20 pounds overweight or at a certain weight. So we're all going to have very unique thoughts that very uniquely make us feel something.
Yes.
But I want to show you through solving the mind math. And so I'm just going to show you the formula behind me. It's called solving the mind math, because your thought, the T stands for thought, drives how it is that you're feeling. And the way you are feeling, now this is very unintentional, it's happening very fast, very subconscious, but it has you reacting. Now, unintentional thoughts are coming from the part of our brain that I like to call your primitive brain. It's the part of your brain that just wants to keep you alive. It's like the survival part of your brain, and it's keeping you alive through a lot of fear-based thoughts. So you might be having a thought like, I'm never going to be able to lose the weight, or I've never been able to lose weight and keep it off. Or, my husband isn't going to find me attractive at this weight, right? You could have any of those thoughts plus probably a whole lot more, but what I want you to see is that they are fear-based thoughts. They're coming from a part of your brain that all it's doing is trying to keep you alive. God gave you that part of your brain for a purpose. And our job as human beings is not to make those thoughts go away. It's to understand that they're supposed to be there, but we don't want to react from them. Okay. So I want to clearly make this distinction. There is nothing wrong with you for having those kind of thoughts. There would be something wrong with you if you weren't having those kind of thoughts. Everybody should have a primitive brain that is very active. But what I want to teach people is that there's a difference between reacting to that thought and responding to that thought. So we've got the two parts of our brain, the primitive part of our brain that's meant to keep us safe. And then we've got what I like to call the prodigy part of our brain that makes decisions based on data. It's very well thought out. It's more methodical. It kind of allows you to have a pause, and you'll find yourself not reacting. You'll find yourself asking high quality questions like, is that thought even true? Like, is it even true that my husband wouldn't find me attractive? Like, we don't know that that's true, but yet we react from that thought. That thought makes us feel insecure. And when we're feeling insecure, just think about how you show up. You might shut down when you're in his presence. You might find yourself opening up a bottle of wine. You might find yourself, being really snappy or snippy with your kids. You might find yourself distracted at work. Like, all of us are going to have a unique way of answering that question, but the mind math is a method for you to see how you unintentionally are creating your experience. So the thought that I'm never going to be able to lose this weight, or my husband won't find me attractive, makes you feel insecure. And then you show up, you react by running into the kitchen, opening up a bottle of wine, being distracted, catastrophizing, looking for all of the evidence. You might find your brain going back to those high school days where so-and-so boyfriend broke up with you, and you made it mean that it was because you didn't look the part, right? So then you go back and you start looking at evidence. All of that creates for you this unwanted experience that you start rinse and repeating if you don't know any better.
Yeah.
And so that formula just shows you very clearly why you're getting the result you're getting, simply because you're having a primitive brain thought that you're reacting to. Nothing has gone wrong. You're not broken. It just clearly shows you. And then you have a choice. You can ask yourself, do I want to continue to create that result for myself? Or do I want to be more intentional with my thinking so that I can create different results? So if the answer is yes, I want to create a different result, then you take the exact same circumstance, being 20 pounds overweight. How do you want to feel about that? Because that feeling insecure, you can see very clearly how that affects your life in a lot of different ways. How do you want to feel about being 20 pounds overweight? Ideally, do you want to feel neutral? Maybe you do want to feel motivated to lose the weight, but you definitely aren't going to lose the weight by feeling insecure.
No, for sure.
So you get to very intentionally ask yourself, and this is part of the prodigy brain, asking a question, how do I want to feel? That just tripped the trigger of the other part of your brain, the non-dramatic part of your brain. So once you ask that question, you've tripped the trigger, and you can come up with a more data-driven, a more fact-based thought, a non-dramatic thought, like I'm equipped to, I know the skills, I know what I need to do, or it's possible that I can learn how to lose weight and keep it off in a new way. Like you just kind of crack the door on possibility so that you feel possibility, so that you feel something other than insecure. Because we know what insecure gets us. We can see it right here. We want to feel something different intentionally so that we can create a different result. Because now just think about, if you have this feeling of possibility running through your body, think about how you show up. Totally different than how you would show up when you're feeling insecure. So the solving the mind math is simply a formula that allows you to see in black and white very clearly the difference between the effects of your primitive brain and the effects of your prodigy brain. And that's what we're trying to make clear to any person out there who feels like circumstances are happening to them, who feel like they're victimized by certain circumstances and they feel out of control. This is the quickest way to help people regain control, to feel a sense of responsibility. And I don't say that from a condemning standpoint. I say that from a empowerment standpoint. You're strengthening your ability to respond. That's what responsibility is versus react. You're strengthening your ability to respond. That's how you become responsible, which is how I define being self-made.
I love that. And I'm thinking to myself, you could use that formula in all areas of your life. Like if you're stuck in really bad traffic and you're telling yourself, I can't, there's no way I'm going to make it, or I'm going to get fired, or I'm going to lose, this client, if you ask questions that calm you down and keep you in a more positive space, as opposed to this, there's nothing that you can do about that circumstance, but to put yourself through those questions. I could just see that working in every area of your life.
Exactly. That's exactly it. Yeah. If you have the wherewithal to ask yourself questions like, is this even true? How is this making me feel? Is this the way I want to feel? Is this the way I want to be showing up? Like that is ideal. A lot of people don't have, without practice, they don't have the wherewithal to trip their prodigy brain to ask questions. So I always say, just start out by noticing how it is that you're feeling in the moment and name it. So I'm feeling overwhelmed right now. That is the best first step, because so many people wear overwhelm like it's just part of their DNA, and they walk through life feeling overwhelmed, never even questioning, never even identifying that has become a part of them, and it doesn't have to be that way. So just noticing how it is that you're feeling and naming it is the best first step that you will then get a lot of traction from, because then you can start asking questions like, why am I feeling this way? The answer is the thought that you're thinking. And then you can start questioning that thought. So that's the practice. And I just call that self-coaching. Like, I'm a life coach. I have a lot of clients that use me to prompt them to get to their thoughts. And as much as I love being a life coach, I would much prefer to equip people with the skill set of self-coaching, so that to your point, when you're sitting in traffic and you're like gripping that steering wheel with all sorts of thoughts that if I don't get there on time, like the bottom's going to fall out. Right. I want that person to be able to ask themselves, like, is that even true? Is there really even a bottom that's going to fall out? Like, why am I being so dramatic about this? Because all it's doing is causing me angst, right? Yeah. Yes. So self-coaching is a huge skill set that the entire world needs to know about pronto.
Tracy, that's so interesting that you say that, because just this morning, and I didn't realize that I was coaching my husband, but I have a story for you. He's very short-tempered. And he's very verbal when he's distraught, very verbal. I'm a female, I lock everything in. You don't hear about it with him, no matter what it is. He the whole, anybody in the house hears about it. So he was having a difficult time with someone that he was on the phone with, and he was being very short and pretty rude to that person. And that always being an empath bothered me, so when he got off, I'm like, you shouldn't do that. That's, it's not their fault that you're having trouble with whatever it is you're having trouble with. And he's like, well, I have to do these kind of calls 30 times a day, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, guess what? So do they. Their job is to be on the phone, with at least 30 people like you a day. I said, can you take yourself out of your own shoes for a second and think about, think more, level-headed, instead of from that emotional side where it's woe is me, poor me, and more so that, it's not going to make a difference whether or not you're super angry to this person. The job's going to get done no matter what, whether you're kind or not. And so I self-coached my husband this morning.
Yeah. Just helping him understand what it is that he's thinking that's driving his frustration, anger, whatever he would say he's feeling. And then showing him how he shows up. He yells, he lashes out, right? He raises his voice. And then asking him, like, is that the experience that you want to keep creating for yourself? Now, the one thing that I'll say is that it's everybody has free will, right? We all have that choice of whether we want to continue to create our own experience over and over and over. His answer might be yes, right? He might say, yeah, this actually works for me, right? So then I would say, it is all about self-coaching. And if that experience of you hearing him on the phone, yelling at other people, and you're making that mean something, and you're feeling something, then the self-coaching would lie within you. Like, how do you not feel this unwanted feeling that then you carry forward? Because the truth of the matter is we have zero control over other people. We can, of course, influence them, right? We can teach them, but they have free will. They always have that choice. And so if your husband said, you know what, you're right, I don't want to continue to create this day in and day out, then just by purely seeing the connection between what it is that he's thinking and how that thought's making him feel, like he might be thinking, these people just don't get it.
Yes.
And I have to do this 30 times a day, right? That thought is making him feel frustrated, which then has him lashing out. If he says, you know what, I don't want to keep creating this for myself. Like, this is not the agenda I want to have day in and day out. Okay. Well, so how do you want to feel about that client? If it's just, I want to feel empathetic. I want to feel neutral even. Maybe that client just doesn't understand. Right. Maybe that client doesn't have the capacity to understand. Maybe that client's just never been taught. Like, those are all thoughts. Every one of those are just a thought. That's probably, if he tries that on, he's going to feel different than frustrated. He's probably going to feel a little bit more neutral, a little bit more empathetic, a little bit more sympathetic, which will have him showing up differently than how he was showing up when he was thinking that other thought. See how that 100%. Works?
Yes. And it is a matter of me as well. Also thinking about my own thoughts during, I'll call them episodes where he just gets really short-tempered. And, we've been together over 30 years, and in the last 30 years, have I changed him? No. So it's really not about me changing him, but more about how I react to that, and then understanding, that it can be, I could really let it get to me, but then I can also learn to be neutral about it, or just walk away.
Yeah. Well, and just learn to understand that if this is something that works for him, it's not going to behoove you to think that it's your job to try to change him. If he decides that this works for him, then what your job actually is to change your thinking so that you feel different.
100%. So you really help, people become achievers, just like you, being a high achiever yourself. And you do take the aspect of health and wellness into that. So can you share with us how you feel that, weight loss can also help you achieve your goals in other areas of your life?
Yeah, no doubt. It has everything to do with the emotional, mental, physical, and then I would say metabolic transformation. And it all starts by understanding yourself. So when I talked about the 4 basics, solving the mind math is what we've talked a lot about so far. Eating foods that fuel you. And when I say fuel you, I mean you uniquely. Some people are fueled by higher amounts of protein. Some people are fueled by higher amounts of fat. The only, I would say, non-negotiable I have with my clients is that I want them to limit, if not eliminate, refined products, because I know that does not fuel you. I know some people will argue that with me all day long and say, no, sugar fuels me.
Oh yeah, not me.
Well, it fuels you, but it does not fuel you in the right way. Because when I say fuel you, I mean, like, I want you to have a sustainable energy source, but I'm also talking about longevity. Like, I want you to have a long life. And so we're talking about fuel, sustainable fuel. And so everybody's going to have a unique food set that fuels them. We give a lot of suggestions, but we do have some boundaries on sugar and flour and refined oils and things like that. And then learning to eat the foods that fuel you, and then learning to collect data. So we teach our clients how to look at their blood glucose, take their blood glucose, and then analyze it, understanding, what is the ideal range of your blood glucose, how your blood is actually responding, what your insulin levels are doing. Mm-hmm. We look at your ketones. I teach them how to get into autophagy, how to become a fat burner, all that good stuff. And then from a metabolic standpoint, again, it's all about longevity. And that, I think, through fasting and balancing out your insulin, you have a much higher chance of living a longer, healthier life. You're going to live a disease-free life when you focus on metabolic health, metabolic flexibility. Like 12% of Americans are metabolically healthy. That's so we've got to do a much better job of taking a holistic approach to living the optimal life. How do those things transfer into professional growth or relationships? Well, if you have no energy, you have nothing, right? So think about the days where you show up to work and you're in a complete brain fog and you feel like you have no productivity whatsoever, and you're letting the overwhelm and the stress shut you down. Those are the kind of things that eating the foods that fuel you, knowing your own personal data, and balancing out your insulin help. So yeah, I teach these fundamentals, these 4 basics, the SELF, in the context of losing weight and keeping it off. But I have a 10-week program. And I have people who have been with me for over 2 years now because they went on to double their income, achieve the highest levels at their place of employment, because now they recognize that all of these, 4 basics that they have learned to practice, including the self-coaching, has a profound effect on every area of their life. And they just want to keep compounding that. And so that's what we do in our membership program, is that we just keep applying those 4 basics to all sorts of areas of our life. So time and productivity and relationships and, all of the things that we all live day to day, but yet we don't necessarily do it with intention. And so that's what we bring to the table on more of an ongoing basis. But for the first 10 weeks, people who come through our door, they go through an intensive that's all about how do you lose weight and keep it off, because that's usually the part that eludes people, is how do you keep it off? And I think through those 4 basics, you'll find the answer.
And I think it's wonderful that you have a practice of, health and business together, and how much they're woven together, and one affects the other. Because you'll hear a lot of, business life coaches and health life coaches, but for someone that really puts a lot of care in both aspects is huge. Can you share what this day in social media, this day and age, is so difficult when it comes to getting good information. And I know that you share with your clients the myths that are out there about, your health and dieting and, all of that stuff. So would you share with us some of those that you hear all the time, maybe from clients, or that you do see on social media or through your email, that you're just like, oh no, that's a myth.
Yeah. And let me just give you a little bit of why I talk about those myths, because I don't want to be thought of as this person who's out, trying to point the finger and trying to demonize, other programs or other offers. That's not it at all. The reason why I shine a light on some of the myths is because I want people to understand that the thoughts that they're having, the unintentional thoughts that they're having, are being driven from indirect and direct messaging that they've been exposed to for a lot of their life. And so I am really trying hard to remove this blame that goes on. Like, a lot of people are like, oh my God, I should have known better. What was I thinking? Well, here's what you were thinking. You were thinking that you believed something that you were told a really long time ago through either a direct message. Maybe your mom told you that you need to eat from the food pyramid. And the biggest part of that food pyramid is carbohydrates, right? It's like, before you go out to track and field, you need to eat a whole bunch of crackers or pasta. Like, that's how I grew up. I thought that before I went out to recess, or before I went out and, ran a mile, I needed to eat spaghetti the night before, right? And like, that's a myth. But it makes sense that I thought that, because that's what I was taught. And so I'm not trying to, demonize the people, because honestly, they may not have known any better. I will say the people who are today perpetuating those myths, shame on them. And that looks like the diet industry and, the pharmaceuticals. And I would say the big brands, the big food brands, I don't know how, any way you can cut it. Cereal, sugar loaded cereal, is not good for kids at any time of day, especially in the morning. Like, you're never, especially for the overweight children, who, again, it's not their fault that they're overweight. It's not their parents' fault that they're overweight. They didn't know any better, but they were brought up thinking that eating cereal is the way to get your metabolism burning quickly in the morning. Another myth, right? It's like, actually, you want to be able to tap into the stored fat on your body as the source of energy. Your brain actually prefers to operate off of fat versus off of glucose, off of the sugar that you're consuming. So you want to learn like the right information so that you can make the right choices. But because you haven't until now, it's not your fault. It's not your fault that you have those thoughts. It's just that you were given misinformation, indirectly or directly. And so to answer your question, the food pyramid is a biggie. Like, you can't get anything more mythical than the food pyramid. Like, agreed. Literally, if you just flip it upside down, you would have it right. But unfortunately, that's not what has been taught. Eating 3 to 5 meals a day, like, I would say that's bogus. I would say use food as one solution, as the solution to hunger, period. That's how I would use food. And so if you're hungry, eat. And then when you do eat until you're satisfied, not until you're full.
Yes.
So that would be the second one. Calories in, calories out is a biggie. A lot of people think that, exercise has everything to do with fat loss. I think that fat loss has everything to do with the hormone insulin. I believe wholeheartedly in exercise, but I believe in it for different reasons. I believe in it like for, strength training, flexibility, mobility. I believe that it helps with stress levels and helps us sleep, but I do not believe in it as a source of weight loss or fat loss. And so focusing on calories is not where I would encourage people to focus. I would encourage them to focus more on the data, what their body is telling them, like literally understanding the numbers, how your body responds to the certain things that you eat.
Yeah.
as well as how your body is responding to environmental factors as well. But that's where I think our area of focus has to be. I think that we are in the epidemic, the obesity epidemic that we're in today, because so many people bought into those myths. And now it's our job to shine a light on the truths and, and teach people how to take back control and to, manage their thoughts and their emotions, to find the foods that fuel them, to learn how to collect the data, how their body is responding to the foods that they eat, and to learn how to fast. And that's one we haven't talked a lot about, but I would say everybody fasts. If you have a thought about fasting right now, like I could never do it, well, I just want to give you the spoiler that you're doing it while you're sleeping. Okay. So you're already fasting. We just teach you how to extend the fast a little bit longer so that you get closer to the results that you want. And if you want to lose weight, if you want to balance out your insulin, majority of the Americans, they are not insulin sensitive, they're insulin resistant. Fasting, intermittent fasting is a great way to remedy that. So I would encourage anybody to look into intermittent fasting if you haven't already.
Yeah, it's so funny. Again, ear to ear grin. My face hurts because you just literally, Tracy, just summed up my ebook with what you said. I've had a lot of guests on, and I always really work very hard to bring on, educated guests. And I had Dr. Shaw on a little while ago, and she is triple board certified, Harvard, Columbia. I mean, she is like the smartest woman on the planet. And she, she's exactly what you said. She is a proponent for. And I'm going to get a little snarky here. This is my podcast. I think I can. I do get a little irritated. Is that a good word? When I see someone that maybe the best way maybe is to put it, that wants as many views and likes as possible on their social media, to say things that kind of will poo-poo the idea of not eating 5 to 6 times a day, not having to eat, the 4, 5, 6 meals a day, the having to eat first thing, all of those things that you just said. They will say, no, that's okay. And then I'm like, but you are combating against such smart people, because here I am again, my podcast, but I truly believe that the smartest people, especially the doctors out there that have gone from Western medicine into functional medicine, are the first ones to be like, whoa, I need to change my tune to help my patients. That I swear every single one that I've talked to has a love of intermittent fasting and has a love of being very carb conscious, especially the refined and processed carbs. Across the board, that is sound advice. And just like you said, putting ourselves out there sometimes makes us less popular, because this isn't necessarily the easiest way, at least in the beginning, to live, for quality and quantity of life. But it is the answer to living your healthiest and to getting rid of the brain fog so that you can be successful in your business ventures, because you take care of yourself on that health basis.
Yeah. My clients will come through the door saying, what attracted me to you is when you said, are you sick and tired of being sick and tired? And I have no idea why one day I said that on a podcast or on like a TikTok or something. I don't even think I remember saying it. But I always lean into my past experiences. And I remember that's how I was feeling. I was so sick and tired of feeling sick and tired. Right. And so if you think it's hard to find the foods that fuel you, if you think it's hard to intermittent fast, I'm going to just challenge you, pick your hard. Do you think it's harder to continue to feel sick and tired? Or do you think it's going to be harder to learn something about yourself and create a more sustainable, abundant life? I promise you, it is far harder to keep living the life of being sick and tired. Yeah. So just, choose your hard.
Yeah. You look, you are the very picture of health. Those of you, I want you to always to go on the YouTube so you can see or at least her Instagram, go to her and see her beautiful face, how she is the picture of health. And I know that bioindividuality is everything. And I'm sure just as much as I teach that you do as well, that, what works for me or what works for you doesn't necessarily mean it will work for you.
Right.
But
Right. Mhm.
can you give me just a snapshot of what a day in the life of you, because you're a high achiever, you've been successful in multiple businesses, you look wonderful. What is your healthy lifestyle look like?
Yeah. So every single morning, the first thing I do is I get very clear on what it is I'm thinking and feeling. So often before I even get out of bed, I'm having those primitive brain thoughts that sound like I have so much to do today.
Mm.
And I immediately feel the anxiety. So here I am, life coach to the life coaches. And I'm telling you, I lay in bed and I feel the same anxiety that you feel every single morning. But here's the difference, you guys. I then recognize, oh, that's just me feeling anxious because I'm having a thought that is being driven by my primitive brain. It's meant to be there. It's that thought is I have so much to do. Okay, so now I recognize that. And I know what a day looks like when I start reacting to that thought. I fly out of bed. I go, I'll kind of meander into the kitchen. I'll make my coffee. I'll keep like spinning out on there's just so much to do. Then I start snapping at my family. I come back into my office. I'm super distracted. I find myself 10 minutes later in front of the pantry looking for the snack. Okay. So I very clearly, because I've done the mind math so many times on what it looks like when I react to that thought, when I react to that feeling of anxiousness. So now it doesn't mean that I have like won the war on having primitive brain thoughts. I'm willing to just let those thoughts be there. And I just ask myself, is that even true?
Yeah.
And if that's true, like what would happen if I didn't get all the things done today? Like I just start to kind of negotiate. I start to ask myself high quality questions that just start to kind of extinguish that anxiety. And what starts to happen is like all the drama gets stripped away and it becomes really clear what the day actually looks like.
Mm.
Okay. So that all happens in about 5 minutes, even though it took me longer than that to even explain it. It doesn't take that long, but I just get really clear on how my thoughts are making me feel.
Yeah.
That is like priority number one. Then, I do all of my self-care. I love it on the days that I don't have calls right out of the gate. I go for a walk. I get out into nature. I'm like breathing deep because I live in Minnesota and we have like kind of a collapsed window of great weather. And so I get out, go for my walk. I'll come back and go lay in the infrared sauna. It's a great detoxing tool. And I know that. And so that's a way that I take care of myself as I detox. So after I shower, come back into my office, I will just get real clear again on what am I thinking and feeling. So that's my self-coaching practice. I put it into the mind math model so I can really see like if I know what it is that I want to accomplish that day, I put it in the intentional model and I work my way backwards. So I have a playbook of this is exactly how I'm going to create that result. And so I teach my clients how to do that, but that works phenomenally for me. That makes me a very high productive person. I usually don't eat a meal until 1 o'clock-ish. So I have a pretty good intermittent fasting window where, I'm going probably 15 hours on average without eating. So my insulin has had an opportunity to really balance out. So the stored body fat that I have on my body, that is what's fueling me. I'm tapping into that as a source of energy. So that feels really good to me. I'm making sure that I'm hydrated. I always have a gallon of water sitting here with electrolytes in it so that I'm constantly drinking water, making sure that my electrolytes are balanced because I know that that makes me function optimally. I happen to love breakfast foods. So typically my lunch looks like breakfast. And then at dinner, I eat usually some sort of big salad with a moderate amount of protein on it. I'm all about really good fats. So when I'm drinking coffee, I add MCT oil, I add heavy whipping cream because I want the good quality fats in my diet.
I
So
agree.
yeah, it's nothing, like earth shattering. I don't take a ton of supplements. I'm really healthy. My kids will say, "Nice flex, mom," when I remind them that I haven't had COVID yet. They're like, "Oh, there's mom flexing again." Like, I don't care, call it what you want. I'm healthy.
I love that. I love that. But as far as I know, I never did either. I did get sick, and I never got tested. So I don't know for sure, but I very rarely get sick. So I probably get that same snark from my children as well, flexing about not getting sick. But I've really, really enjoyed this. And I would love for my following to, besides Instagram, because I've already put you on my Instagram, and I will again when we release this, but where else they can find you to get more information on your life coaching and just to soak in all of your knowledge. And as you guys can tell, she's one of those coaches that you can just feel the care, that when you work with someone, you can tell that there is a level of, it's very personal. And I love that you make sure that it becomes very individual. And I think that's kind of rare these days. It's not cookie cutter. It sounds very individual. And I think that's great.
Yeah. Well, and I think anybody who's doing what we're doing, you have to be driven by people's results over profits. I mean, I think my kids and I were just having this conversation the other day, and I'm like, it really matters to me how people go about their life. And if they are somebody who has decided that they want something different, but they just don't know where to start, I want to inspire them to this new way of thinking. And it all starts with the people. The profits come, and that's amazing. But those profits then allow you to find more people, which is amazing. So, but I would say Melissa, you're the exact same, illustration of that, because I don't think that you can be a podcast host and a coach and an influencer without being driven by people's results. Because to your point, people can sniff out the, people who have profits in front of people. And that's why we're still here. So thank you. But I would say the same is true for you. If you want to connect with me, just go to selfmadeu.com. So it's just SELF-MADE, and then it's the letter U.com. What we have on there right now for all of your listeners is a quiz that it takes about 90 seconds, and it reveals your unique relationship with food. So we've broken it down to 4 particular relationships. You're either the romantic, the quick fixer, the snacker, or the overthinker. And then we offer you a 5-day challenge that helps you overcome any of those tendencies that's keeping you overweight. So like I said, we get a lot of people through our door who want to lose weight. So we've put that quiz out there. That's the best way to really understand the 4 basics of what we teach, and kind of just dip your toe into it and see if it's worth looking into and, pursuing a better understanding of yourself. That's the best place to start.
And I love that, because those 4 are very distinct, and you will, when I was reading those, I just resonated with the one. And you think your relationship with food is just generic, that you crave food, but there's such reasons behind it. And that quiz does such a good job of helping you understand who you are and how you can overcome that type of. So I really highly encourage you guys to do that and to follow Tracy and her team on social media, and share this podcast, because I think it's going to be very valuable for a lot of people, especially when they have the tendency to use that primitive brain just a little too much. And which is, like she said, there's a reason it's there. We needed to think survival. This day and age, it's pretty easy to survive, but we haven't gotten rid of that yet. So I just appreciate everything that you shared. And I'm looking at the o'clock and it's just about an hour, which doesn't shock me whatsoever because I told you, I was like, I got to pick her brain. And thank you so much. You answered all of the questions that I had for you so eloquently. And I appreciate you being on the podcast and look forward to hopefully getting together and collaborating again.
That would be awesome. Thanks, Melissa. I appreciate being here.
You're welcome. You enjoy your boat.
I will.
So thank you guys for being on. As always, I want you to wake up feeling prepared and I want you to go to bed feeling proud, and we will see you next time. Wow, we've reached the end. But before I leave you, I'd love to hear from you. After all, it's not every day that someone reaches out and asks for your opinion. And to me, your opinion does matter. So please share this episode with anyone that you think needs to hear this message. And remember to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. My name is Melissa McAllister. And until next time, thank you for being your own health advocate.